There are 5 things you must hold close, like a prayer in the hush of dawn: your dreams, your scars, your kindness, your coins, and your family's storm. These are sacred. Protect them. The world listens, not to heal, but to whisper. Keep what is holy from those who trade in noise. There is a weight to silence that many do not understand. It is not emptiness, nor is it absence. It is presence without noise, power without performance. Silence is the breath between storms, the pause before wisdom is spoken, and the language of those who have nothing to prove but everything to protect. In a world where people trade truths like currency, where loudness is often mistaken for strength, there is something sacred about what is unspoken. We live in times where privacy is treated like a weakness, as though keeping something to yourself is a sign of shame rather than strength. But there are things, sacred things, that lose their value once they are exposed to the hands of many. You do not need to open every door in your soul for others to peer in. Not everyone deserves to walk through your quiet. There is dignity in restraint. There is nobility in not explaining yourself to those who haven't earned the right to understand. Your silence is not a gap to be filled. It is a boundary. It tells the world, here I am, and here is where you cannot follow. It is not arrogance. It is self-respect. It is knowing that your truth is not a spectacle for others to digest, dissect, or decorate with their opinions. Silence allows us to hear ourselves before we hear the world. So often we are quick to share our pain, our plans, our progress, not because it brings peace, but because we fear being forgotten or misunderstood. But the truth is, the most sacred parts of you don't require validation. They require protection. Not every dream needs applause to grow. Not every scar needs an audience to heal. Not every thought is meant to be turned into content. We must reclaim our right to quietness, to privacy, to holding something deep within us that is not touched by likes, comments, or nods of approval. Sacred silence is where our spirit breathes. It's the room where our true self is not edited for others' comfort. In silence, we gather ourselves. We listen to the voice that isn't swayed by fear or flattery. There is a kind of wisdom that grows in stillness, one that doesn't need to announce itself to be valid. People may call you mysterious, guarded, or even distant. Let them. You owe no one a map to your soul. What is sacred is not shared cheaply. When you speak too soon, too much, too freely, you may give away parts of yourself that were never meant for public view. Sometimes silence is mistaken for weakness because we live in a world that measures power by volume. But don't be fooled. The lion does not have to roar to remind others of its strength. The ocean does not shout to drown a mountain. And a soul anchored in silence is unshakable. There is power in holding your peace when chaos surrounds you. There is strength in smiling while the world demands your pain as proof, not because you are hiding, but because you are healing. Sacred silence teaches us patience. It invites us to trust our timing, to allow things to ripen in their own season without being plucked prematurely for the approval of others. What is whispered to your spirit in the quiet hours of the night is not meant to be shouted in rooms that cannot hold it. Some visions need solitude. Some wisdom needs the womb of silence to be born whole. Even in love, silence is a form of intimacy. To sit beside someone and not need to fill the air with words is to be known without performance. To let someone into your silence is a gift, not an obligation. And if you've ever been betrayed by a listening ear that later became a gossiping mouth, you know why silence is golden. People will ask you to share, to open up, to just be real. But realness is not spilling your soul for someone else's entertainment. Realness is knowing when to speak and when to remain still. The world doesn't need all of your story to respect you. You don't owe anyone access to your becoming. Let your silence speak for you. Let it tell the world you are not for sale, that your truth is not up for auction, that your healing, your joy, your growth, these are yours first and only yours until you choose otherwise. Sacred silence is not a lack of voice. It is the fullness of your spirit choosing when, how, and with whom to speak. And that, beloved, is where the real power lives. Dreams are tender seeds, fragile in their first form, delicate in their beginning. They are born in quiet moments, late at night when the world is still, or in the small spaces between chores and conversations. They begin as whispers, soft ideas that rest in the hands of your soul, waiting to grow. But like any seed, they must be protected. Exposed too early to careless words, skeptical eyes, or the harsh winds of doubt, they may never bloom. Not because they weren't powerful, but because they weren't given the space to root. You must understand, not everyone has the eyes to see what you see. Not everyone has the heart to believe what you believe. So when you carry a dream, carry it gently, carry it close. Let it grow in silence, in soil only you can tend. Speak life over it in private. Water it with discipline. Give it light through your actions. Your dream doesn't need everyone's permission to exist. It only needs your commitment to protect it from harm. So often we rush to share what we haven't yet finished building. We seek approval for a vision still unfolding. We offer our dreams to the wrong hands, hands that do not know how to hold something so sacred. And in return, we receive doubt, discouragement, or indifference. We learn the hard way that not every listener is a believer. Some will laugh, some will advise you to be realistic, and some will simply not care. And that can be enough to crush something beautiful before it's had a chance to rise. A dream in its early form is vulnerable. Just like a seed does not resemble the tree it will become, your dream may not yet look like success. It may be clumsy, incomplete, unpolished. It may not make sense to others. That is not failure. That is the process. Every oak began as something almost invisible. Every masterpiece was once a mess. So protect the process. Let your dream grow roots before you ask others to admire its branches. You do not owe anyone the blueprint before you've built the foundation. You do not have to explain the fire in your chest to those who feel nothing but coldness in their bones. Some people are not dreamers, they are doubters. They do not mean harm, but they cannot give what they do not possess. And if you are not careful, they will talk you out of what you were born to do. There is a difference between wisdom and fear disguised as advice. Learn to know the difference. Listen for the tone of dismissal, the quiet mockery hidden in concern. Are you sure that's what you want to do? What if it doesn't work? Why don't you try something safer? These voices may wear the face of love, but love does not shrink you. Love does not silence the music in your bones. When you have a dream, you must become its protector. You must stand guard like a gardener over fresh soil. Pull out weeds of insecurity. Chase off the crows of comparison. Shield it from the storm of other people's failures. Just because someone else gave up on their dream doesn't mean yours is doomed. Their story is not your prophecy. Their limits are not your destiny. There will come a time when your dream is strong enough to speak for itself. When the roots have deepened, when the stem has risen, when the first bloom appears, then if you choose, you may invite others to see. But never before it's ready, never before you are strong enough to let their opinion pass over you like wind through leaves without uprooting what you've built. Sometimes silence is the greatest act of faith. Keeping your dream to yourself is not secrecy, it is stewardship. The seed kept in darkness is not forgotten, it is being prepared. In silence, your dream gathers strength. In solitude, it forms shape. And when the time comes, when it has grown tall and sure, it will not need defending. Its fruit will speak for itself. Dreams are tender seeds, and you are the soil. What you allow near it will determine what it becomes. Tend it with patience. Speak to it with hope. Guard it with courage. And above all, believe in it enough to let it grow without applause. Some of the greatest things the world will ever see begin in the quiet where only your heart can hear. Pain is not the enemy. It is not the thing to run from, not the shadow to erase. Pain is the teacher that shows up when comfort has nothing left to offer. It is the mirror that does not lie, the voice that does not flatter, the weight that forces you to discover the strength you forgot you had. Your pain, yes, your pain is not your shame. It is your wisdom in disguise. There is something sacred about the moments that break you. Not because the breaking feels good, but because it strips away everything that isn't real. The masks fall, the distractions fade, and you are left with the raw truth of who you are and what still matters. In pain, we are forced to feel what we've buried. We are invited, sometimes dragged, to face what we've refused to look at. And that is where the wisdom begins. You may not realize it now, but the wounds you carry have taught you things that no book, no mentor, no speech could ever give you. They taught you how to bend without breaking, how to cry without losing your voice, how to be afraid and still move forward. There is something in you now, something fierce, something clear that wasn't there before the ache. That's not weakness. That's the beginning of power. The world tells you to hide your hurt, to smile when your soul is weeping, to stay composed, to be fine, always fine. But what if I told you that the parts you try to conceal are the very roots of your strength? You do not have to pretend. You do not have to perform. You survived. And that is the beginning of wisdom. Not in the fact that you were hurt, but in the way you refused to stay broken. Your pain teaches you discernment. It teaches you who to trust, who to walk with, and who to walk away from. It sharpens your vision. You begin to see through words, through promises, through appearances. Pain strips away illusion. It forces you to rely on your inner knowing, on that quiet voice that always knew better, but that you might have ignored until the hurt made you listen. Pain humbles you. It shows you that you are not immune to life's storms, that none of us are. It softens the hard edges of pride. It makes you more compassionate, more patient. You begin to understand others not by their words, but by their silence, by the weight they carry in their eyes. Pain doesn't just change you, it deepens you. It adds a richness to your soul that cannot be faked, and that richness is wisdom. But pain must be honored, it must be acknowledged, not rushed, not covered up with distractions or false positivity. Healing does not mean pretending it didn't happen. Healing means letting it teach you without letting it define you. The wisdom comes not from the wound, but from what you do with it, from how you rebuild, from how you rise. There are some things you only learn by walking through fire. You learn how to forgive yourself, how to stand alone, how to ask for help, how to sit in the silence and know you are still worthy, how to let go of what you wanted so you can receive what you need. That's the kind of wisdom pain offers, the kind you don't get from comfort or success. And when the time is right, when your healing has found its legs, that wisdom will become your offering. You will speak and others will hear themselves in your voice. You will hold space for pain without shrinking from it. You will walk beside others, not as a savior, but as someone who knows the road. You will be able to say, I've been there and I made it through. And that is the deepest kind of wisdom, the kind that lifts others as it lifts you. So no, your pain is not pointless. It is not wasted. It is not the end of your story. It is a sacred passage. It may not look like light right now, but light is coming. And when it does, you will look back and see that every step, every tear, every scar was not in vain, because your pain, your very own pain, has become your wisdom. Your financial standing is your private armor. It does not need to be announced, explained, or displayed for validation. In a world obsessed with appearance, with labels and numbers and glittering shows of wealth, there is something powerful, almost rebellious, about keeping your financial matters to yourself. Not from fear, but from wisdom. Not from insecurity, but from security that speaks without speaking. Money, whether plenty or little, draws attention. And attention is not always accompanied by understanding. People interpret your worth through the lens of your wallet, not your spirit. They watch what you wear, where you live, what you drive, and then decide who you are. But those measures are illusions. A person can appear rich and be drowning in debt. A person can look modest and be walking with generational wealth. The truth is not always in what's visible, and that is why your financial standing should be held like armor, quiet, strong, and unseen. There is power in being underestimated, in keeping your resources close and your intentions even closer. When people don't know what you have, they can't manipulate, beg, or compete with ghosts. Your silence becomes your protection. You move in peace. You give without guilt. You save without the need to impress. You build in secret. That is how legacies are born, not with noise, but with intention. In silence, you are free, free from comparison, free from the constant pressure to prove that you're doing well. You don't owe the world your bank balance. You don't need to explain why you're not spending or why you are. Whether you're investing, saving, or rebuilding, that journey is yours. Financial dignity is not in how loud your lifestyle is. It's in how much control you have over your choices, how little you need approval to feel secure. Let them guess. Let them assume. That is not your burden. Because the moment you start living to be seen, you risk living beyond your means. The moment you allow the world to measure your value by your possessions, you invite a race with no finish line. You become a performer in a show that never ends. And worse, you forget the joy of simplicity, the strength in strategy, the quiet victories of financial discipline. Money is a tool, not a trophy. It is meant to serve, not dominate. It is meant to provide stability, not status. The loudest people are often the most fragile. The quiet ones, they're building things you won't hear about until decades later. They're paying off debt, acquiring assets, creating cushion, funding dreams without ever needing to show it. Your financial life is not a public story. It is a private garden. It grows in seasons. It has weeds, setbacks, and blooming moments. But it is yours to tend. Don't let someone else's judgment become your compass. Don't let someone else's pressure become your plan. Just because they spend loudly doesn't mean they're ahead. Just because they mock your restraint doesn't mean you're behind. Financial silence allows you to think clearly, to make decisions not from the ego, but from vision. It gives you space to learn, to correct, to grow without shame. No one needs to know what you earn, what you owe, or what you own. Your worth is not up for public debate. You can have a quiet wallet and a loud purpose. You can be wealthy and still walk humbly. That is strength. Let your lifestyle reflect your values, not your ego. Let your choices speak of discipline, not desperation. If they don't see the sacrifices, that's fine. If they don't understand your limits, that's okay. They are not meant to. Only you know what you are building. Only you know what that quiet account represents: freedom, security, peace of mind. The most powerful people are not always the ones in designer clothes or luxury cars. Sometimes it's the woman in simple shoes who owns her home, the man in a modest suit with no debt, the single mother saving every penny for her child's future, the couple who chose a smaller wedding so they could build a bigger life. That is power. That is wealth. And it doesn't need an audience. So keep your finances guarded like sacred ground. Move in silence. Grow in secret. And remember, what you protect will protect you. Your financial standing is your private armor. Wear it wisely. Acts of kindness need no trumpet. They do not require applause, nor do they seek validation. Real kindness is quiet, like water soaking into the roots of a thirsty tree. It nourishes without asking for recognition. It gives because it believes in the giving, not because it hopes for a spotlight. In a time when every gesture is packaged, posted, and polished for the stage of public opinion, true kindness moves in the opposite direction, humbly, silently, and often unnoticed. The soul of a kind act is in its intention. When you give from the heart, there is a sacredness that words cannot explain and cameras cannot capture. You do it because something inside you recognizes someone else's need, because compassion rose up before convenience could silence it. And when that kindness is pure, you don't need to tell the world. The act is already complete. The gift is already whole. We've been taught to associate kindness with grand gestures and public affirmation. We see people feeding the homeless only when a phone is recording. We see generosity documented for followers, filmed from angles that center the giver more than the one receiving. But kindness is not a performance. It is a quiet power. It does not need a witness to matter. In fact, it is often most powerful when no one sees it but you and the one it touches. There is a deeper satisfaction in giving when no one is looking. It teaches you that your goodness is not dependent on credit. It anchors your character in something stronger than applause. It is easy to give when the world claps for you. It is a different kind of strength to give when no one knows your name, to tip the waiter generously without waiting to be praised, to leave groceries at someone's door without a note, to speak a kind word, to forgive silently, to lift someone's spirit without needing to be known. Kindness is not currency. It is not to be traded for compliments or followers. When it becomes a tool for self-promotion, it loses something sacred. It becomes performance art, not an act of the soul. And the world, though loud, is not blind. It can feel the difference. People know when they are being helped and when they are being used as props in someone else's story. But the one who gives in silence, that person carries a different kind of strength. They walk with quiet integrity. They are not chasing attention. They are spreading humanity. Their reward is not public praise, but private peace. They sleep well, not because they were admired, but because they stayed true to their values. That kind of kindness doesn't echo in halls of fame, but it leaves echoes in hearts that will never forget it. To be kind without credit is to align yourself with something higher than ego. It is to understand that real change, real love, real healing, none of these require a stage. You don't need a hashtag to make a difference. You don't need a camera to capture compassion. The ripple of one quiet, kind act can move through time and space in ways you may never fully understand. A child remembers the stranger who helped their mother. A man remembers the warmth of a stranger's smile on the hardest day of his life. These moments, though unseen by the world, become part of someone else's survival. You never know what someone is carrying. Your kindness might be the thing that pulls them back from the edge. And if you truly care, if your kindness is real, you don't need to tell the world what you did. You don't need to sculpt your image out of someone else's struggle. You just need to care enough to act and then walk away, content in the quiet truth that you were there when it mattered. There is a deep, quiet dignity in those who give without fanfare. They are the pillars of unseen grace in this world. Their light is not blinding, but it is constant. They are the reason someone still believes in goodness. They are the proof that kindness does not need to be loud enough. Acts of kindness need no trumpet, because the purest love never seeks an audience. It simply shows up and gives. Family troubles deserve shelter, not silence that breeds shame, but protection that holds dignity. There is a sacredness to the struggles that live behind the walls of a home, and though not every problem can be solved in secret, not every pain needs to be paraded. Some things are meant to be held close, not hidden in fear, but preserved in love. Family in all its complexity deserves that grace. There is no perfect family. There is no home untouched by tension, no bloodline free of brokenness. But the strength of a family is not in appearing flawless to the world. It is in how it chooses to protect, heal, and grow, especially when no one is watching. It is in how it shelters each other through storms, not by pretending the rain doesn't fall, but by standing together under the weight of it. When families air their pain before it has found its root, they invite opinions that do not bring healing. They open wounds to the wind and wonder why the healing takes so long. There is a difference between secrecy and shelter. Secrecy hides with fear. Shelter guards with wisdom. To shelter family troubles is to honor the process, to understand that every disagreement doesn't need a council of outsiders. Not everyone who listens is loyal. Not everyone who asks is concerned. Some only want something to talk about. Some only seek to measure their own peace by comparing it to your chaos. And once you've placed your pain into too many hands, it no longer belongs to you. It becomes public property, open for judgment, distortion, and gossip. The home should be a place where wounds are addressed, not exposed. Where accountability exists, yes, but also compassion. Where correction happens in love, not for show. Where children learn that mistakes don't mean exile, and where spouses understand that conflict doesn't erase commitment. But all of that takes protection. Not from truth, but from noise. Not from healing, but from harm. It is tempting, especially in moments of anger or betrayal, to turn outward. To find a friend, a stranger, or a screen and pour your heart into it. To post, to vent, to expose. It may feel like release, but it often leads to regret. Because long after your hurt has softened, the echo of your words will remain. And those who listened in your worst moment may never forget what you said, even if you've forgiven, even if you've healed. Some things must be worked out within the walls of the people who are living them. That doesn't mean you suffer in silence. It means you are selective about where you take your truth. You seek counsel, not a crowd. You find wise voices, not loud ones. And you understand that resolution is not helped by reputation being shredded in public. Family is delicate, even when it's strong. It is built on shared memory, shared pain, and shared forgiveness. Once trust is broken in the open, it takes twice the effort to rebuild. Once a child hears their parent humiliated, or a sibling hears their pain ridiculed outside the family, something changes. And even when forgiveness arrives, the memory of exposure lingers. To shelter family troubles is not to deny them. It is to give them a safe place to be seen and sorted. It is to say, what happens between us matters, and we will face it together without shame, without the world's interference. It is to preserve sacred space where people can be imperfect and still be protected. That is not weakness. That is wisdom. That is the kind of love that says, I will not leave you uncovered. There will be moments when outside help is necessary, when the weight is too much to carry alone. In those moments, the shelter still stands. It just opens its doors to those who are equipped to help, not those who are simply curious. You don't need everyone to understand your journey. You just need those who walk with you to feel safe enough to be seen. We live in a world where everything is shared, everything is shown, but not everything needs an audience. Some healing requires stillness. Some restoration needs privacy. Some love needs room to falter and find its way back without fear of being judged in the open court of public opinion. So give your family the shelter it deserves. Hold space for healing without turning it into a spectacle. Speak truth with care. Protect what is sacred, because no matter how hard the storm, a family protected in love can rebuild again. Not perfectly, but powerfully. And that power begins with the wisdom to shelter what matters most. In a world that demands visibility, validation, and vulnerability on display, there is quiet strength in choosing discernment. Each of these truths, guarding your silence, protecting your dreams, honoring your pain, preserving your financial privacy, giving without applause, and sheltering your family, are not acts of secrecy, but acts of wisdom. They are the foundations of a life rooted in integrity, not performance. The deepest power often flows in the quietest choices. Let the world hear what you allow, but let your spirit hold what truly matters. Because what is sacred isn't always meant to be shared. It's meant to be protected.